Hi, this is Kathy Stucker. In this video, we're going to look at some ways you can research the copyright status of a work. Now, we're going to be looking at U.S. copyright records here, and there are some simple ways you can check to see if something is in the public domain or if the copyright was renewed. Before you use something you believe to be in the public domain, I strongly recommend that you confirm its status with the Copyright Office. You can do that one of two ways. You can actually contract with the Copyright Office themselves. You pay them a fee, they do the research and let you know. Or you can use a private firm such as Thompson & Thompson. Using the private firm is not only faster, it often costs less money than using the Copyright Office. So before you use a work, have it checked out in the actual Copyright Office records. They physically go in and pull the records and look to see if something was renewed. However, before you spend $100 or so to have something researched, there are some simple checks you can do. What I found is often I find a work that I think might possibly be in the public domain, and doing just a quick online check, I find out that in fact, no, the copyright was renewed, it's not public domain. So we're going to look at a few of the places you would go to check that out. Now remember that anything that was published before 1923 in the United States, so if it's a copyright of 1922 or earlier, that work is now going to be in the public domain. And anything that was copyrighted from about 1964 forward is probably under copyright. There are a few exceptions to that, but almost always, if it's 1964 or later copyright, it's going to be subject to copyright and not in the public domain. So the IFI area comes in that range between 1923 and 1963. There are lots of books that were published during that time, and other works too, and you're going to go through a similar process for other works. There were lots of works created during that period that are no longer covered by copyright because the copyright was not properly renewed. That's what we're looking for here. There are lots of resources, but the first thing we're going to do is go down this page to where it says Summaries and Indexes, and it leads us to a few things. It says the Copyright Office database is the place to go for registrations and renewals from 1978 onward. What this means is that if a book was copyrighted between about 1950 and 1963 and the copyright was renewed, that copyright renewal should be in this Copyright Office database. Now what about books that were copyrighted between 1923 and 1950? Well, there are a couple of databases out there that can help you with this. One is the database at Stanford that's linked to here. In fact, the database at Stanford has copyright renewals listed for anything that was originally copyrighted between 1923 and 1963 and then renewed. There are transcriptions of copyright renewal records. That's something you can search. And then there are some other things like list of copyright renewals for periodicals. That would be things like magazines there. But let's start at the Copyright Office database and see what a search is like there, and then we'll go through some of these others. When we come to the copyright website, one of the options is Online Records, and then you can search the catalog. When you click on Search the Catalog, you can do a basic search. Now there are other search options here where you can search for keywords and so on, but if you're just looking to see if a particular work has been renewed, this basic search should do exactly what you need. Now I have a book here that was copyrighted in 1961, so that would be within this database. Remember, this will have works that were originally copyrighted between 1950 and 1963 that may or may not have been renewed. They'll tell us if it was renewed. The book is called How to Sell Well. So we put that title in, and we're searching by title. You can also search by author name and other characteristics. And what comes up is a renewal record. So How to Sell Well has been renewed and is still under copyright. If we take a look at this, it says it is a text. It was renewed in 1989. It was originally registered in 1961. See all of that information here. It has the full title, How to Sell Well, The Art and Science of Professional Salesmanship. It's by James F. Bender. So I know that this is in fact the work that I have, and it is under copyright. I cannot use this. It's not a public domain work. Now remember, the Copyright Office is only going to have those works that were originally copyrighted between about 1950 and forward. For example, we'd be looking at 1950 to 1963. But if you have something that was copyrighted earlier, then you might want to look at another database. And one of those is this database at Stanford. And here again we can do a simple search. Now I have a book here that was originally copyrighted in 1938 and 1944, and I want to see if it was renewed. And it's called How Never to Be Tired. Now there are two records here both showing renewals. Chances are one of these is the 1938 record. There it is. It was originally registered in 1938 and it was properly renewed in 1966. And this is probably the 1944 record. Yes, it is. It was registered in May of 1944 and was renewed in August of 71. And you see the renewing entity is not Marie Ray, the original author. Instead, it's someone else who is claiming the rights. For example, it might be her son or someone else who inherited the rights from her. But it certainly is owned. You cannot assume that because a book is out of print that it's in public domain. You cannot assume that because the author is deceased that the book is now in public domain. Neither of those places a book in the public domain. In this case, this book is most definitely under copyright and could not be used without the permission of the rights owner. In this case, Merwin Lewis appears to be the person who owns the copyright on this book. Another way to research the copyright renewal is to look at the actual records from the Copyright Office for the appropriate year. Now this can actually take looking in 6 different places within the Copyright Office records. That's because they break down the records by January through June and July through December for each year. And in order to make sure you've checked all of the relevant records, you would have to go through 3 different years. Because of the way this copyright renewal could happen, something could actually be renewed in the 27th, 28th, or 29th year and still be adequately renewed, meet that requirement. So let's take a look here at what you might be looking at. These are the copyright renewal records from 1950 to 1977. Of course, anything beyond that is going to be online at the copyright site. This renews copyrights from 1922 to 1950. Let's look up this book I have that was originally copyrighted in 1944 to see if we can find the original copyright record here. So we go down this list until we find 1971. We click on that. And here it reminds us original copyrights in this list date from 1943 and 1944. 1943 copyrights could also be renewed in 1970. And 1944 copyrights could also be renewed in 1972. This is listed by the author's name. So our author's last name is Ray. Now this is a little complicated because she uses 3 names actually. She uses Marie Bayman Ray. So it's possible it's under the B's. I would check that also. But I'm going to assume that if there's a renewal, it's probably under Ray, so that's where I'm going to start. When we open up this record, now in this case it's opening it in my system in the Microsoft Office document imaging. It may open in a different program on your computer. That's okay. You just want to look at this image. It's actually an image of the copyright record. And I don't find anything for Ray here, so it's not in this one. That means we come back down here. We've already checked January through June. Now we're going to check July through December. We're on the same page. We're going to call up the page where someone with the last name of Ray would be and open this up. And here, as soon as we open this, we see exactly what we're looking for here. This is the book. I'm going to enlarge it a little bit so you can see. It says Marie Bayman Ray, How Never to Be Tired, or 2 Lifetimes in One, new completely revised edition. It shows the original date of the copyright, the original registration number. It shows who the current claimant is, and it also shows the date that it was renewed and the renewal number. So now we know that yes, in fact, this record was renewed. Remember, we already saw this at the Copyright Office, but I'm just showing you how you can research this because it may come in handy to look at the actual copyright records. There are some other resources you may want to explore on this page, but this is a good start. This gives you an idea of how to go about researching the copyright renewal status of a work. Now, in addition to the Stanford database we looked at, there is a similar database that's run by Rutgers. And this works much the same way as the earlier database we saw. You simply enter a few words from the title or author, submit the query, and it comes back with any results. So if you want to do another check, if something doesn't come up, you want to check it against a database, the data should be the same in both databases. But if you're not sure, it's always worth a few seconds to do that check. Now, once you've gotten to this point, you've had one of two results. Either you found a copyright renewal for the work, indicating that in fact the copyright was renewed, it is under copyright and is not in the public domain, or you didn't find a copyright renewal, which indicates that the work is probably in the public domain. If it is still covered by copyright, you can't use the work unless you get permission from the current rights holders. So you may want to contact those person or persons to find out if they would allow you to use the work. They may be willing to negotiate either the right for you to republish the work, or they may even sell you the copyright, in which case you would become the new copyright owner to that work. It will take some detective work in many cases to find the proper persons who own the rights. You start with the information that's in the copyright records and then try to find those people. But it can be worthwhile if you have something that you really want to use. Now, on the other hand, if you found out that the work is not renewed as far as you can tell, the next step would be to have that confirmed by having someone do an in-person search of the copyright records. And as I said earlier, that can be the Copyright Office themselves, or it can be a private firm such as Thompson & Thompson. Expect to pay at least $100, maybe more, and if it's a particularly complex case, it could be much more, to have them do this search. But they can give you the verification that, yes, in fact, they looked at the records, they know what they're doing when they look at the records too, and that, in fact, they did not find a renewal for the work you are looking for. Thank you for watching this video on researching copyright renewal and public domain status. Links to all of the websites that we looked at are in the PDF document that accompanies this course.